It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. And a lot of it depends on who you voted for. We used to divide by income and education. Then we divided by race and ethnicity. And now we're dividing by whether we're Democrats or Republicans, whether we voted for or against Donald Trump. For the people who voted for Donald Trump, these are the best of times. Even those who are economically challenged believe that things will get better, and they have faith and confidence in the president. For those who voted against him, as he himself says, he could cure cancer, and they still wouldn't give him a break. We live in America today that's hopelessly divided, that's polarized beyond anything we've seen since the late 1960s. It's become toxic that it's actually become more important than our religion. Our faith has become our politics, and that is as divisive and polarizing as it can possibly be. So it's hard for me to give you an overall assessment because it depends on where you sit and how you vote.
That's right. And that is why it's so difficult for people, I guess, to find common ground in so many cases on this holiday. There are folks who are nervous about going to Christmas dinner with the family. Frank, I'm sure you talk to a lot of people like this because they don't know what's going to come up at the table. This brings us back to that contrast that we felt in the first term. And I would love to just go back a year with you and have you walk us through the evolution that this president and this administration has experienced, remembering a year ago him being swept into office with one of the most remarkable and unlikely political comebacks in American history. We saw the hiring, of course, of his staff, the placement of his cabinet, and over the course of this year, we've seen prices remain extremely stubborn. We've seen the volatility around his tariff regime, and we're capping this year with the release of the Epstein files that seems to be overshadowing everything, including this massive increase in healthcare premiums because Congress can't seem to get anything done. Is there buyer's remorse inside this White House?
Let's be fair. We've also seen the solving, not putting a Band-Aid on immigration, but actually solving the problems at the border. And that's one of the issues that Donald Trump ran on. Now, the danger for somebody like me is that if I say something positive, points to a success that everyone, and I have them in my head as I'm thinking about what I'm going to answer for you, and they're all going to say, oh, he's a Trump apologist or he's a Trump loyalist. And if I challenge him on inflation, on affordability, all the Trump people will see this and they'll say, oh, you can't give him a break. You're just challenging him. You're just hostile to him. In the end, the reason why Bloomberg is so important is that you don't have a choice. You have to tell the truth. People make decisions based on what they hear from your show and the other shows on the network. And those decisions determine whether or not they have an economically great year or bad year. And so we have to be honest. And here's the problem, the thing that bothers me the most at the end of 2025. It is so hard to tell the truth and to do so and be backed up by people who watch shows like this. Because in the end, the American people don't want to be informed. They want to be affirmed. And I hope that's not the case with the Bloomberg viewer, because there are good marks for the president and there are bad marks. And both of them are correct. There are successes and there are failures. Just as in America, we have our own successes and our own failures. Make no mistake, there are a significant number of Americans, 55%, more than half, who in some way live paycheck to paycheck every week or every month, struggling to pay their bills. There's 1/3 of Americans who cannot afford a $500 emergency bill. And there's 45% of Americans who cannot afford a $5,000 emergency. That's not a country that's sleeping well at night. That's not a country that feels comfortable with the future. And it's our responsibility, yours and mine, to tell the truth. Because if we do, that's how you solve the challenges, and to accept that people have to learn to work together side by side to get these things done.
Well, I love that answer on so many levels, Frank, because if I ask you about stubborn inflation, it will be assumed that I am only giving the president a hard time, right? If I ask you about the success at the border, We have the same thing. I'm just a mirror image of you. If I ask you about that, then I will be accused of defending the president. When did we get to this space in time? Does this predate the first Trump term, or it's since social media? More than that.
It's hyper right now, and I want to go back to healthcare because that's something I've been studying over the last few weeks. It doesn't matter what the solution is. That I read in the media and I see in the media right now that the issue is whether or not they continue the price supports, they continue the subsidies for Obamacare. And that's not the point. It's not whether or not you agree or disagree with a specific policy. It's whether your solutions are better able to bring costs down, to make things more affordable, and most importantly, to make healthcare less expensive. The president is correct, and I will emphasize this, that he is correct when he says that the public desperately needs support and that in the end, they trust the individual more than they trust either the government or the health insurance companies. We're ending this year with both of them being demonized legitimately for high prices. And he's suggesting that the message is not getting through, that he's suggesting that it's far better for the government, whatever it's going to do, to give it to the individual than it is to hand it over to the government or hand it over to the health insurance companies. So that's where the president is right. The president is wrong on dismissing, on calling it a hoax, because if you can't afford eggs or you can't afford meat, if you can't afford the house you want to live in, or as we talk about, insurance, either healthcare or otherwise, if they aren't affordable to you, no matter what he says, it's still a fact. Because in the end, it's about perception, not reality. So here I praised him for healthcare. I've challenged him on the word of affordability because he really needs to change his hostility to it. It's how the Americans communicate. So in the end, our objective is to make a meaningful, measurable difference, is to improve not just quality of life, but also standard of living, because both of them matter. And in the end, the only way that's going to work is if they start in Washington, if they stop, I should say, these endless fights and learn how to cooperate and compromise. And compromise is a bad word, so maybe we should just stick with cooperate. But it's up to them to make a difference, stop blaming each other, and start solving the problems.